What is going on, Governors? Chisgule here, and today we are going to help you prepare your defenses for attack from alphas. Players that are so strong they single-handedly can wipe out just about anyone they want with a swarm of their troops. Defense is possible, and with these tips, I think you can achieve it. Now, this is a special, extra long video giving my partner alliances strategy for their defense. Those alliances include, but are not limited to, Legion, Ultra Legion, Faceless, Death Heaven, The Grin, and the Misfits Incorporated. Thank you so much. I am so excited that we are allies together, and it is my hope that in the long term the entire kingdom is allied. Now, if you like war preparation videos, you should really like and subscribe because we're going to give you very in-depth tips, and these are literally the tips right now I am sharing with my allies, and honestly, the other members of my kingdom are all going to be watching this as well, and that's a-okay. I am excited to be on a kingdom that is really quite active, and as much as I would prefer to be in a state of prosperous peace, the action is real. So let me tell you what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what an alpha is. We're going to talk about why you need to prepare, and we're going to show a little battle report from what happened this morning, which was bananas. And then we're going to talk about how you can actually defend yourself, which is really crucial. And let's get started. What is an alpha? An alpha is a player who has so much power that they've got tier 5 troops, they can run over just about anybody by sending a swarm of armies. Now, in our kingdom, there are several alphas, and more rising up. Those include the Hulk, Pay to Win, Thor, and B. Now, the reason in part that I'm making this video is that 2 of our alphas are in Legion, that's LN, and the alliance we've been skirmishing with, they've got 2 alphas, and they are in Marvel. Now, I want to call attention to the fact that we've got a brief period of peace negotiated very heavily by myself and Thor, and I'm so appreciative, Thor, for your pushing for peace and for the leaders of Marvel allowing us to have a very peaceful New Year's. Thank you for that. So, this is what an alpha is, and let me show you a little bit of examples of what an alpha can do. It's pretty nuts. I'm going to have photos off to the side, or maybe replacing the whole screen, showing what took place this morning in my kingdom. I woke up, and on my doorstep was the Hulk and Thor, and they were zeroing out players from our alliance. It turns out that Pay to Win from my alliance had done some zeroing out himself from Marvel. And so this exchange went back and forth, both sides taking heavy losses. The attackers take losses, the defenders take heavy, heavy losses. The intent is to catch someone when they're not paying attention or they're offline. And the damage is very steep. The deaths are unbelievable. And part of the reason for that is that people's hospitals fill up and every troops that they had above hospital capacity dies. Because normally when you're on defense, your troops they go to the hospital instead of being killed if you're defending your city. So when the hospital fills up, though, they die. Now, this conflict ultimately escalated and is what prompted me to make this video, because the Hulk and Thor will be back on our turf at some point. I mean, I hope that's not the case. I hope we find a peaceful situation. And Pay to Win and B will show up on their doorstep as well. So how do you actually prepare for this kind of thing? I'm going to give some tactics that are very important. And to do that, we need to take a look at the map. Now, you'll notice all these blue specks are members of my alliance. And if I zoom out more, you can see that we have a whole bunch of folks in a cluster and a whole bunch of folks that are sort of in the suburbs or in the rural areas, far, far away. It is these players that are far away from the rest of the alliance that were attacked. And they get attacked because it's almost impossible to help them in this situation. You can see here that someone could teleport right next to them outside of our flags, send a bunch of troops in, zero them out, and be gone almost as fast as we can teleport over. Now, to protect yourself, you need to be more in the central location, like this player is here. But even that, I think, is not a really good position to be in against an alpha, because That's a short walk still. No, what I would recommend is that you enter into something called the Hive. And the Hive is a tightly knit grouping of players. This is a common concept in this style of game. And the Hive is very intimidating because you can reinforce each other really, really rapidly. Now, there are a number of ways that you can do that, and we'll talk about how and why you do that in a second. But my recommendation, when one of these big players enters into your doorstep, is that you bubble. You use a peace shield, because unless people are already there and ready to defend you, you're going to take a lot of losses before they can arrive, and it's probably not worth it. That said, let me show you something else that's really special about being in the Hive. We've spent a not small amount of time creating a situation where it would be a multi-minute walk to get to any member of the Hive. This is in part because there are rivers, there are mountains, so even though you see gaps here, we've done a pretty good job of making sure that almost every single nook and cranny cannot be teleported to by the enemy. And that's very important because in this case, pretty much everybody at this stage has access to the same territory that we're in. In a perfect world, we would control the level 3 passes. That would not be the case. I mean, a real perfect world, the whole kingdom would be at peace, but whatever. So we've created a situation where it's very, very hard to attack the Hive without some amount of notice with a swarm of units. Now, they could all pour it in and use a rally, in which case we also have a lot of time to prepare, to use a peace shield, or even reinforce them. And reinforcing is not the worst strategy when you have a 5 or 10 minute warning and they got to take a 5 or 10 minute walk to get there. It makes it very, very hard for someone to assault you. So creating this style of Hive configuration, I think, is very important. Creating all of these flags around your turf to make that cushion of safety is very crucial, and I probably will be locating more central to our Hive very soon. So with that said, this is really tip of the iceberg. Being in the Hive is good, but the Hive is even more powerful for many reasons. Let's say that someone attacks your city and they're coming at you. Another technique you can use is to unload your troops into a nearby flag. Now, a flag or other alliance building can only be attacked if they have an adjacent flag. So you send all your troops nearby, and you put them in a flag, and then they can't attack you. Your city is safe. And sure, they make your city burn, and you lose some resources. You can always spend down your resources, use some speed ups, burn through some stuff. Not a big deal. You make their attack worthless, and you just jump over to that structure. They can't even touch it. They can't even touch it. The other thing you could do, by the way, is send one of your armies, and you can only send one army to an ally, but you can send one of your armies to an ally that's bubbled. Now, if you're defending an assault against your own turf, and they're building flags into your territory and actually trying to take your flags, you should not teleport away. You should stay there with your city. Let's say my flag right here was being attacked. What I would do in this situation is I would bubble. So I don't have to worry about them swarm attacking me. I would bubble, and then what I can do is I can shuttle large amounts of troops into the alliance flag to defend it. And if you need to, even if they are swarming this area with lots of troops, you don't have to worry about it because you can send your armies sort of skipping along from one building to another. Let me just recall my troops really quickly from this gold node that we're harvesting from and show you what I mean. So I could send some troops to the flag very, very quickly with a troop preset. No one could have reacted and attacked me in that little window. And then I could reinforce this city. It would be very hard to get a meaningful attack on me in that short window of time. And then I reinforce this city. And you see where this is going. I can hopscotch my way all the way across this land without taking a lot of attacks potentially. And the tighter your Hive is, the more effective this is. So I think this is a very, very powerful technique for getting wherever you need to go, even if those people are on your turf. And by the way, this is very relevant against an alpha. And why is this relevant? An alpha is going to have tier 5 troops. You don't want to fight tier 5 troops in open combat because they're just going to slaughter you. Their army is probably larger than yours. Even if you use a army expansion, which you should be if you're trying to battle in open field combat. Um, their technology is so much higher, their troops are so much stronger. Unless you have a number of fellow alliance members doing that attack at the same time, you're going to take some heavy losses. So to avoid fighting them in open field to get where you need to go, you can just hopscotch. You can just jump between these different structures and get wherever you're going pretty quickly. And if you have a commander that has the mobility tree, and the cavalry do, you could specialize them to pick up this talent, Hasty Departure. This talent also exists in the support tree, so that you can get from building to building really quickly. Joan of Arc would be a great example of a commander who's still rocking, by the way. You could use her as the leader with a support build, give her Hasty Departure, and get where you're going. So, that is one way you can go from point to point to point, and what you should do if they're assaulting a flag, and let's say this flag was burning for some reason, you would want to start to fill up all of the adjacent flags full of troops, and you can send an army to each of these flags potentially. Your city should be bubbled at this point. You don't have to worry about them attacking you. Send your troops and fill these flags. The flags can have 1.5 million troops in them, which is a lot. Which is a lot of troops. You can put them there for safekeeping overnight, so you don't have to worry about being attacked if you don't feel like using a peace shield. All of that is really excellent. Now, you would see in my prior video, and I'll have a link up in the top, about how you can change the captain of the flag, the captain of that garrison. That matters tremendously. You want to have a garrison commander. Okay, more strategy to come. We're not done yet. Let's say, as I was describing, this flag is burning. They still can only attack adjacent flags, so you would want to reinforce the 2 flags in this case that are adjacent. And one thing that you can do to prevent them from even building a flag is using a technique that I call Lohar's Thievery. I made up this name, but people have been doing this. I didn't make up the technique. And the technique is as follows. You use Lohar's longbow, Lohar's buckler, Thieves' cloak, stuff like this that spawn lots of things onto the map to create a situation where the enemy can't actually place a flag anymore. And that sounds like a dirty trick, and you might be going, oh, that's not cool, that's really low. And let me tell you a story that I think is very important to tell. And I think this is a true story. It was told to me by one of my colleagues, and it's about a game called Street Fighter. It's like 2D, you fight another player, and there was this move you could do where you could throw someone into a corner, they would bounce off the wall, you'd catch them, and you'd throw them in the corner, and they couldn't get out of this loop. It would be an infinite loop, and you'd win. And the very high-end players of this game called that a cheesy move, and there was an unspoken agreement that none of the best players would do this move. And there was a world championship for this game, Street Fighter, if you can believe it. And in the World Championship, the player that won used the move where you throw somebody in the corner and they're stuck. And they were also, I think, a very good player of the game to have even gotten as far as they did. And that's obviously not the only way to win or lose in that game, but they ended up winning the World Championship. And they have a quote that has stuck with me for the rest of time, which is that winners do not create rules that don't exist. These items exist in the game. They spawn a thing that makes it impossible to build a flag. Use it to your advantage if you like, or don't, but the technique is good, and if I'm being assaulted by an alpha who has a 50 million power advantage on me, I'm going to use every trick I have, and that's one that you could deploy if you like. So, with that said, where might an attack come if someone were to be assaulting your turf? Now, if they are trying to build into your territory to take an objective, such as a shrine, such as the Lost Temple, they're probably either going to build flags over or build a fortress doing a forward fortress style assault. I've got a link in the description about what that style of assault is and how it works. Essentially where they build a fortress and they start to build flags to make their way over. It's very hard to stop them if they reinforce that structure with 2 million troops or 1.5 million troops. For the same reason we have a hard time, or they would have a hard time assaulting us. We would have a hard time assaulting them. You got to lead rallies, blah, blah, blah. It's tough to stop somebody that's moving in on your land, and it's sort of an overtime attrition affair, I think, if both sides are very active and defending appropriately. So I think the key is to be ready to defend and potentially ready to strike as well. We'll have more tactics, I think, about how you stop that kind of assault in a future video. I want to think on that one a little bit more. One technique that I thought was really interesting that I heard from a friend, and I'm going to give a full list of friends and allies that gave me tips and tactics, but one thing you could do is build 2 flags to cover the same area. And I think that's an interesting strategy, right? You could put like 2 flags next to each other. I think I haven't ever tested this, and then they'd have to destroy both flags before they could actually build into your turf. I think that's a very expensive strategy. I think we're really pressed for gold to do that sort of a move. But it's a thing you could do that is, I think, only worth doing if you were to fill both of those flags full of troops. Otherwise, it's not much different to have 1 or to have 2. All right. Whew. I know I've covered a lot of ground here. There's a lot of stuff you can do to prepare for an alpha's attack. You can put your troops somewhere so they can't be attacked, and ultimately you can create a situation where there are no casualties for you, which I think is very, very powerful. Now, the advice I've given you today comes from a number of places. I personally consult with a number of folks, including Fermata, Telerian, Deeds from the Legends gaming community, Silent Wraith, Legend Ronnie, who's another exceptional YouTuber, the Kingdom 200 Jumper Project's War Council weighed in on ways that we can effectively defend ourselves. My friends, we've got a lot of allies here. Even folks who are not within our kingdom are happy to offer advice around how you can best defend yourself. So I hope that everyone can benefit from this wisdom, and I am so profoundly thankful for everybody weighing in. We'll have more to follow, more content involving all those individuals. And if you've got any questions, comments, let me know below. My hope is truly that soon our kingdom will be in a state of prosperous peace. My hope is that we can accomplish that through diplomacy. A part of the reason that our kingdom has this intense war going on is that my understanding is that some number of folks in Marvel felt that the kingdom was complacent and that people should be learning how to play the game better, learning how to actually defend themselves rather than being sort of docile. And I think in a lot of ways, we can thank them for accomplishing that. It's come at a cost, but the kingdom is getting very, very good at defending itself. More than one person sent me a message today thanking me for the advice on garrison commanders, because when someone went to zero them, they did a lot of damage before ultimately having to either bubble or before help could arrive. So I hope we do arrive in that state of peace soon. I want to thank again Thor and Geordie Stark and the leaders of Marvel for agreeing to a ceasefire through New Year's. We really appreciate that. And yeah, until next time, my friends, you have fun smashing the kingdom.